My name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby, where, with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone making his 40th Harping Pod appearance, also a resident stats guru. Welcome back to Mr. Keno Miller.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
No problem. And also here is someone earning cap number 6 himself. Hello to Mr. Hugo Gordon.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
No problem. And Keno, I hear in the grapevine that you plan to be moonlighting another pod for the Women's Six Nations.
Yeah, myself and Irish Women's Rugby Supporters Club are starting up a women's rugby podcast. I'm going to be producing and co-hosting, so it's a bit of a change for me. But I got asked and I couldn't say no. In fairness, it's a part of the pod sphere which is very underserviced at the moment. So I kind of felt like I needed to do my bit.
Absolutely. We spoke to herself there a couple of weeks ago on the pod and to introduce it. It's called Mother Ruckers, the Irish Women's Rugby Podcast, and that should be appearing very soon. The Women's Six Nations starts at the end of March, so keep an eye out for that, okay? And so now this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Keno.
That was pretty much my thought.
Yep.
At the final whistle. But at this point, I kind of thought the easier way. I didn't have time to look back at the second half, so I thought, why don't I just look at some stats instead? That's much easier. So I did that. And honestly, looking at the attack stats, there's very little between the two sides. Now, looking at the defensive stats, there's a fair difference between the two sides. France put in an incredible defensive shift. It's the best I've seen them perform in defense in probably since the World Cup. It was absolutely back to Sean Edwards, stone cold, shut down. But honestly, yeah, I mean, they had 8 dominant tackles to our 3. They had 4 turnover tackles. They made kind of 184 tackles to our 94. And only missed 2 more than we did. And we conceded 4 more turnovers than they did. Their penalty count was through the roof. And the set pieces were even. So it's like, yes, their defense was very good. That was one of the things that won them this game. But going back to the attack stats, it's like, yeah, they're very similar. Carry meters were like 886 to 744. 21 tackle breaks to their 19, 4 line breaks to their 6, 9 offloads. We had more offloads than France in this game. The difference was that we were putting the moves together, but we weren't getting the gain line. We weren't able to reliably either get behind and get hands away with a trail runner, or literally just penetrate their line with a good kind of angled run, or we weren't compressing them. They were staying calm. They weren't rushing up. They were staying calm. They were staying spread out. They were able to put two men tackles in where they needed to. They were able to flood the ruck where they needed to. So they had us on toast with their defense. And then they just like, yeah, have the ball, run yourselves ragged. And then getting to the point I was trying to make, the difference in the attacks was their stats were the same, but they chose their moments, counter, and did so amazingly. They have players that can counter in a way we can't. Frankly, being honest, it's not how Ireland play. It's how they play because they can. They've got the player base to do it with. But by God, seeing it in full flight, like even when it's happening against you, you have to applaud it. And we kind of have to accept where Ireland are at right now is the end of a development cycle. We're saying goodbye to some stalwart players who really have been historically important Irish players, and I have nothing but graw in my heart for them and wish them the best. But we've got work to do.
Yeah, it's a question of, I mean, you see the difference over the 80 minutes is just the collective performance of the French, which is what you need for a good defensive strategy. You have to all work together, and they were determined. They were making the hits, and that's stuff. That's the kind of play that we've been doing, especially defensively, and working together as a team. But they just had that. I'm afraid to say it, but it has to be said: the cohesion among whatever 15 was on the park for them throughout the match. They had it, and we didn't. We did some good things at times, but not we weren't following them up with other good things until towards the very end, and we were pushing it. I mean, that breakaway try towards the end, that was probably the most frustrating element of the entire game. But when you take it in context, we were pushing it at that stage. It was kind of almost bound to happen when you're especially when you're playing France with guys like Peno on the park. I think the real frustrations were happening earlier when we weren't able to score, when we had the chances, and they always knew that they could. They always had that. They always looked like they were able to get us around us out wide, they were just, we gave them those opportunities to do that. What did you make of it, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad day at the office anyway. You look at it, it's our worst defeat in Dublin for I don't know how long. I did see a stat that we haven't conceded that many points in Ireland in Dublin since 2005, which is pretty astonishing. That was against the All Blacks. Whatever, and I said this a little bit earlier, but whatever about losing to this France team is phenomenal. They are so good. They have so many good players. They are exhilarating to watch, and when it's not your team that it's happening to, they are just it's watching rugby as you kind of want rugby to be played. But even taking that into account, an Ireland team that had, genuine potential, is back-to-back champions and had a genuine chance of winning a third in a row, having 42 points stuck on you in your home ground is not a good outcome. Ironically, some of the things, and we mentioned a little bit earlier, but some things that have been a problem for Ireland throughout this tournament actually went broadly okay. Our set piece worked pretty well. Our lineup worked pretty well. We weren't really able to make much of kind of a platform off of either the scrum or the lineup, but they as kind of set pieces they were functioning fine. And our discipline, oddly, was actually pretty good. We didn't give away many penalties in this game. That was kind of the mad thing about this game. It's just that
only six, I think.
Six.
For the whole, yeah.
But two of those were yellow cards.
Yeah.
And two of those were three of those were kicked over by Ramos. So the penalties when they came were absolute killers. And by contrast, we were not really able to take advantage of what France were giving us in terms of their lack of discipline. More broadly, attack, which has been a problem, did stutter again. We just, especially in that opening 10 minutes, we weren't able to make those periods of possession count, and that's been a problem all through this tournament. There's obviously been a lot of chatter about Sam Prendergast after this game. He didn't have a great day at the office. I think that's clear to everyone. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination he was the winning or losing of this game. Our pack was blown off the park by France in that second half, when that 7-1 bench came on, and it's not just having the 7-1 bench. Plenty of teams have tried the 7-1 bench and it hasn't worked effectively. France were able to make it work very, very well, and they boxed very clever, and maybe we didn't, but we were just blown away. It's a tough one to take. You're watching your silverware hopes go up in smoke in the space of 15 minutes. You're always going to wonder about what might have been had we kept this one a little bit closer. Had we gotten that bonus point against Wales, we could still be in a shout going into the final weekend. As it is, we're actually up against it to finish higher than third. England currently have the advantage of us. If they get a bonus point against Wales, there's nothing we can do to catch them. So we're hoping that Wales do us a favour, and we need to put in a performance now against Italy. There needs to be a kind of a reaction to this from Ireland, and there's real money on the line for this. The difference between finishing first and finishing third is millions of euro. The difference between had we won a Grand Slam is another million or so euro. That's a lot of money to disappear in the space of 15 minutes. It really is. It was a really, really rough period for Irish rugby. Yesterday afternoon in a very short space of time. It's going to be one that we're just going to have to learn from and build on. One I'd like to forget fairly quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, just I don't know if this will give anyone any comfort or not, but just to put a little bit of context on losing to this French side. The record for number of tries scored in the Six Nations by a team within the season is England, from 2001 scored 29 tries across the full Six Nations. And France are currently on 26 with a match in hand. So that'll give you an idea of where they stand in the in the pecking order of great scoring, great attacking teams of the last 25 years, or well, actually more if you want to include the whole Five Nations. So yeah, it hurts, but if you're gonna lose, lose to the best.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason nobody has won three Six Nations in a row in that, because when you win two in a row, or even if you win one, the eyes of the other five are fixed firmly on you. And
Centric circles
yeah,
drawn on your back like a
yeah,
big feckin' target.
absolutely. And listen, France and France are renowned over the years for playing their own way no matter what, and expecting that to work. And more often than not, it does work. But this French team was different. They came to play Ireland. They came to play Ireland off the park. They prepared that 7-1 bench the week before just to make sure, or the round before. They were ready to play us. They played us off the park, and all we can do now is regroup and give them more of the same maybe next year, and see what happens. See what happens then. But listen, it's disappointing all around. But listen, that's a brilliant pod, though. You both did really well going over the game. Fair play to you, and watching it again for me as well. Thanks again for that. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Keno and Hugo for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jeff.